Okay, we're ready to start the agenda portion of the council meeting. We have a request, a public hearing, and that one we have a request to hold it at this time because there's documents that we didn't get on time. We have ordinance 05101. It's an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 12, streets, sidewalks, and public places. Ordinances is first reading. We have ordinance 05102, an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, title 10, vehicles and traffic, time limit parking. Ordinance 05103 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, U-turn prohibition on Tennyson Road at Stockton Road intersection, stop signs installed on Stockton Road and Tennyson Road at Stockton Road intersection. Ordinance 05104, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Resolutions. Resolution 051341, resolution to approve agenda amendments. Resolution 342, approve payroll 42713 to 51013. Resolution 343, authorize refund for redeemed tax sale certificates. Resolution 344, approve emergency and temporary appropriations for 2013. Resolution 345, City of New Brunswick 2013 municipal budget. Introduction on Wednesday, May 15, 2013. Public meeting set for Wednesday, July 17, 2013 at 5:30. Resolution 346, resolution to discourage smoking in city parks and other public places. Resolution 347, approve request for use of city property proposed by United Methodist Church of New Brunswick, location to the Park Pavilion for a church picnic on Sunday, August 18, 2013 from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Resolution 348, approve request for use of city property requested by Lilia Manzanares, Eagle Park Pavilion for a family baby shower on Sunday, May 26, 2013 from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Resolution 349, approve a water contract with Longo Electrical Mechanical Inc. for sanitary sewer pump station maintenance. The term is 24 months, beginning on May 16, 2013 and ending on May 15, 2015, not to exceed $105,560. Resolution 350, approve authorization to rebid requested by the police department for translation services for the police department. Resolution 351, approve request to Division of Alcoholic Beverage Control to act on renewal of plenary retail consumption license for the Brunswick Lodge 224 BPO Elks for the period of July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2014. Resolution 352, award professional service agreement with CFG Health Systems for New Brunswick Police Department psychiatric services for prisoners. This is from January 1st, 2013 to December 31st, 2013, not to exceed $2,426.40. This is a non-control. Resolution 353, approve award of grant for rehabilitation home improvement. One grant for Evelyn Martinez and Loren Torres, 18 Wellington Place, not to exceed $17,100. Resolution 354, approve request for street closing requested by the New Brunswick Police Department, PDA number 23, street location for Patrick Street between you and Barrier Street for National Police Week Memorial Service on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2013 from 10 to 12 p.m. Resolution 355, approve payment to Raymond Kenzoka, the hearing officer for disciplinary review of police officer Arthur Anderson, not to exceed $2,250, non-control. Resolution 356, authorizing use of copy machine for fire department for the list. For G Capital Information Tech Solutions doing business as Rico USA for one Rico digital color copier, not to exceed $226.80 a month, beginning June 1st, 2013 and ending May property requested by Woodrow Wilson, New Brunswick Board of Education. The location is Murphy Park for Woodrow Wilson Field Day and Carnival on Friday, May 31st, 2013, from 8:30 to 4 p.m. with a rain date of Friday, June 7th, 2013. Resolution 354, authorize submission of project plan to co-op for use of RCA funds for the Hospital for Review Senior Affordable Rental Housing Project. Resolution 359, approve request for use of city property requested by Supersonic Track Club, AAU, New Jersey. Location, Memorial Stadium, track and field for AAU National Qualifier for track run events, field events, and multi-events for youth at least 8 under and 18 years of age. This is for Friday, June 28th, Saturday, June 29th, and Sunday, June 30th, 2013, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Resolution 360, approves 2013-2014 consolidated action plan for CDBG and home funding. CDBG 2013-2014 allocation is $666,875. Home for 2013-2014 allocation is $321,009. Resolution 361, approve resolution for acceptance of long-term tax exemption and pilot application for the Hotel Pavilion Senior Affordable Housing Project. Resolution 362, approve appointment of counsel, Lawrence Peterman, representation of Sergeant John Quick in the matter of Frank Carroll Jr. versus the City of New Brunswick, not to exceed $1,000. Resolution 363, approve amendment of resolution 041-368. The reason is to pay additional legal fees in the amount of $1,974.20 to Will Wallach, LLP, for the matter of E.O. Mesopardagno, from $50,371.73 to $52,345.93. Resolution 364, authorize execution of certification municipal right-of-way. This is in reference to the New Brunswick Bikeway project. Resolution 365, approve relaxation of the city noise ordinance requested by Construction Management Associates. The location is 15 Union Street. Days are Saturday during the following period of May 18th through September 28th, 2013, excluding holiday weekends from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Resolution 366, approve relaxation of the city noise ordinance requested by Construction Management Associates, location 610 Union Street. The days are Saturdays during the following period of May 18th, 2013, September 28th, 2013, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Resolution 367, approve amendment of resolution 061-268. The reason is authorization for supplemental services with Hatchmont McDonald for 2012-2013 miscellaneous engineering services not to exceed $4,600. Resolution 368, approve amendment of resolution 011-82, change order number 1 to Tecton Development Corporation for Remsen Avenue Fire Museum and Community Center. The amount is $14,697.22. Approval of this change order will now constitute an increase of 20% more. The amount of the original contract. Resolution 369, approve amendment of resolution 031-359, change order number 1 with National Fence Systems for the New Brunswick Public Library fence improvement. The amount is $9,150. Approval of this change order will not constitute an increase of 20% or more of the amount of the original contract. Resolution 370, approve award of contract with Safety in doing business as Atlantic Tactical for work uniforms for the Police Department and Municipal Court. The term is 12 months, beginning on May 16, 2013, and ending on May 15, 2014, not to exceed $21,442. Resolution 371, authorized purchase by Park Department under state contract A83315 from DFFLM LLC doing business at Ditchman, Flemington, Florida, for two 2013 Ford F-150 pickup trucks, not to exceed $40,600. Resolution 372, Set hearing date relative to continuation or termination of conditions on ABC license for the Gala Cafe, date June 5th, 2013. Resolution 373, set hearing date relative to continuation, termination of condition of ABC license for Mi Vieja Bar, Pierce Inc., on June 5th, 2013. Resolution 374, set hearing date relative to continuation or termination of condition of ABC license for La Famosa Inc. on June 5th, 2013. Resolution 375, set hearing date relative to continuation or termination of conditions on ABC license for Kelly's Corner on June 5th, 2013. Resolution 376, set hearing date relative to continuation, termination of conditions on ABC license for the Med Platinum Lounge LLC, date June 19th, 2013. Resolution 377, set hearing date relative to continuation or termination of conditions on ABC license for Tropicana Bar on June 19th, 2013. Resolution 378, approve amendment of resolution 021247 for municipal court. The reason is to pay for additional images copy machine from Rico USA in the capital Infotech solution, not to exceed $225. Approval of this change order will not constitute an increase of 20% or more of the amount of the original contract. Resolution 379, approve a water contract with John Duffy Fuel Company to furnish and deliver of fuel, oil, and diesel. The term is 12 months, beginning on May 16, 2013, and ending on May 15, 2014, not to exceed $40,000. Resolution 380, authorize payment for emergency procurement for emergency repair for deteriorated plaster walls and ceilings in the law office, hallway, and administrator's office with LA Home Improvement Contractors doing business as Marion and Jacobson General Contractors, not to exceed $8,350. Resolution 381, approval of permit raffle at 40 Livingston Avenue for New Brunswick, New Jersey, Elks Lodge, 324, on December 7, 2013. Resolution 382, authorize tax collector to transfer over payments on several tax and utility accounts. Resolution 383, approve amendment of resolution 05105, change of date, requested by Livingston Elementary School. The location is Monument Square Park. The musical concert performances in the park by Livingston Elementary School 9 students on the new date is Wednesday, June 5th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Resolution 384, approve request for use of city property requested by the New Brunswick Democratic Organization. The location is Mercy Park. Meet and greet for committee candidates with live refreshments on Saturday, May 18th, 2013, from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Resolution 385, approve request for street closing. It was requested by Jewish Federation of Middlesex County, and the street location is Livingston Avenue, closing from the Hillbrook to George Street Playhouse, honoring 13 past presidents of Jewish Federation on Thursday, June 6, 2013, from 7:20 p.m. to 8:20 p.m. And we have one item for discussion by the council, which is a request for fracking resolution. That's it. Okay. Okay, at this time, the meeting is called to order. Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Council Vice President Egan.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Garlotti is absent.
Oh,
you're here? I'm sorry, I haven't seen you. Council
In spirit.
President. I'm sorry.
Present. She said from the nether world.
Council President Escobar.
Here. Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act have been complied with and satisfied in that the annual notice, which gave sufficient notice of the time and place and conduct of all public meetings of the Municipal Council of the City of New Brunswick, has been filed with the City Clerk, has been placed on an appropriate bulletin board in the lobby of City Hall, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to the official newspaper for the City of New Brunswick, namely the Community News.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
one of those Americans in Afghan who are close to the guys in the war in Afghanistan. Thank you. At this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Yes.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. As I said before, at the review, we had, we're voting the public hearing for Kelly's Corner at this time. And the reason is because we needed to get some documents, that were not given to us, on time. We're gonna hold that for the night. Ordinances on second reading, ordinance 05121, it's an ordinance to amend and supplement and revise general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 12, streets, sidewalks, and public places.
You got a motion to table the resolution, ordinance to table the resolution, or ordinance, twice.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. We have three ordinances on first reading. Ordinance 05102 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, Title 10, vehicles and traffic, time limit parking.
Make a motion, setting down June 5th, same day to be advertised.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. Ordinance 051-303 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, U-turn prohibition, Tomlinson Road and Stockton Road intersection, stop intersections, stop signs installed on Stockton Road at Tomlinson Road and Stockton Road intersection.
I move the ordinance setting down Wednesday, June 5th at 5:30, same date to be advertised.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. Ordinance 051-304 is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank.
I move the ordinance setting down Wednesday, June 5th at 5:30, same date to be advertised for public hearing.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. At this time, we have resolution 341 to resolution 385. Does any member of the public wishes to make statement or comment with regards to these resolutions at this time? Yes, Mr. Franklin? Name and address, please.
Charles Caterpillar, 88 Plum Street. It's great to see everyone tonight. First, I want to ask about the municipal budget, ending in number 45. That means it's introduced as of today? Okay, so it's not yet a public document, but how soon will it be available to people who want to see it?
There's a,
And could we hear just a little bit about the finer points of the budget, if like taxes are going up or staying the same?
very nice and sweet.
Okay. We expect the municipal tax rate to increase by 3.9 cents. Last year's rate was, saw an increase of 6.3 cents, so we feel very good about this year's budget. We think it will affect the average property owner by a value of $43.86. We define the average property owner as a single-family home assessed at $118,000.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it. Next one is ends in 55, the hearing officer for the disciplinary hearing of police officer Arthur Anderson. What is that all about?
Matter that's been concluded, Mr. Chairman, are you up to date on that?
Yes. in connection with the departmental disciplinary hearing involving a particular officer, in this case Officer Anderson, the department has the ability to retain an outside independent hearing officer for purposes of presiding over that particular matter and issuing a decision in connection with the proposed discipline. And that's Mr. Heyduka's fee for providing that service.
So to be clear, the hearing hasn't happened yet.
It has happened.
And what was the outcome?
It's a disciplinary matter, and it's not something that can be
That's a
discussed in
personal
public.
matter.
Yeah.
How regular is that there's disciplinary hearings? Because it's a hefty sum, to $22.50. So sometimes the department has disciplinary hearings and they don't have a hearing officer, and sometimes they do. Is that correct?
It all depends whether or not the officer is contesting the discipline. The officer has a right to request a hearing. If he contests the discipline and requests a hearing at the departmental level, the appointing authority, which is the city, has the ability to appoint a hearing officer for purposes of giving that officer, or any other employee for that matter, his or her due process, and that's what this is all about.
Thank you very much.
You don't see it that often, because in a lot of cases, there aren't particular hearings that are at that level.
Understood. 58 and also I think 60 and 61 are referring to a new building project for senior housing. It seems like a good thing. I just want to know if we could hear a little bit about like how many units and who they're going to be available to and how to get them.
Mr. Harrison, I know he asked for the.
This is a project at the site of the former Hoffman Pavilion on Nielsen Street. That was senior citizen public housing that HUD gave approval to the Housing Authority about 2 or 3 years ago to demolish those buildings and then to replace them elsewhere in town. They've been partially replaced at the project known as Providence Square, which is on Harvey Street. This project would supplement that and replace the balance of the units, plus provide additional affordable senior housing in the city. This project is going to have 72 units in it, and we are looking here to get authority to make an application to COA, to use some of the city's RCA funds to provide a portion of the financing for that. In addition to that, we're looking to accept an application for a tax abatement for the project, which is something we typically do for the affordable housing projects in town. And it also allows the project to gain extra points on an application with New Jersey Housing Mortgage Finance Agency for CDBG-DR funding, which is new funding that HMFA has available for projects like these. And they have an expedited application process, which has a May 31st deadline. So we're trying to get all this approved so that this application can get the maximum possible points because it's a very competitive process.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you mentioned COA. I know that that's been in the news a lot this week, the Council on Affordable Housing, and I want to know if there's somebody who's going to articulate the city's position on what the governor's trying to do with that. I think it's one of the more alarming things the governor's trying to do is sort of seize that money, and I know it's tied up in the courts. Is that going to have an impact on this project? Is the city going to fight it or what?
So I'm going to have Mr. Harrison say, how many seconds?
Some of what the governor has proposed or is trying to do here is a little murky as to exactly what it affects. He is trying to take back housing trust fund monies from municipalities that got these funds from developers to provide affordable housing in various municipalities. That does not affect New Brunswick, as I read what he's trying to do, because we do not have a trust fund. The dollars that we have are from regional contribution agreement dollars, and from our reading of it, those appear to be a separate pot of money. So I do not think it affects us currently under what he's trying to do, but you know, he could change in the future. Obviously, we want to be able to keep those dollars here for New Brunswick. We've used them over the last 25 years to do a lot of affordable housing in town, and we'd like to be able to continue to do that. We are very aggressive in trying to afford affordable housing. We think it's a good thing to have in town. We want to have more of it to have a balanced housing supply in the city.
Thank you for the thorough response. Number 64 is the municipal right-of-way for the bikeway project. That's great to hear that's moving ahead in some fashion. What exactly is being done today?
So when they come.
Recertification of the right-of-way was required, and the signature of the engineer was required on that certification.
I have talked to one of the freeholders, and he said he wouldn't put a date on it, but it's soon, so that's good. The next two are a little troubling. 65 and 66 is for noise ordinance to be relaxed, starting at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. Is that typical? Wouldn't that wake people up?
We have seen that in the past, Mr. Brown, they have, yeah, they have been salaries. They have from 8
At 8 a.m.?
Yeah, we
Oh,
see
boy,
that in the
that's-
past, yeah.
This sounds pretty bad.
Yes, Mr. Nixon.
I've talked to the developer on these projects. He's basically completed with the projects. I don't know if he's actually going to be doing it. So he's, I believe he was getting his final inspections this week. So I'm not quite sure why I had it out till September, but I believe he's completed.
Just in
it. So,
case, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
I believe also there was, as I've asked before, that if there is a problem or something, he was willing to, or anybody was willing to stop if there was a problem in the first place.
That's all the questions. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wishes to address the councils on resolution 341 to resolution 385?
Resolutions?
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. We have, the council has one item for discussion, it's a request, they have requested from the council to do a resolution in fracking, so we're gonna have a discussion on that. I know we have been reading a lot of documents, we have some information, at this time, start the conversation. Anybody has anything, council members?
Well, my concern with fracking is related to water quality. New Brunswick has an excellent reputation for supplying water throughout its boundaries and also to other municipalities. And so anything that has the potential to infringe on water quality is of great concern of mine. In the course of doing research about this process, it came to my attention that there is a study underway, which is being sponsored by the Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level, and it's going to be a peer-reviewed study, so of the highest quality research, and unfortunately, it will not be concluded until 2014. Our ability to use that information and to inform our decision today would be difficult, unless, of course, I get some brainwaves from somewhere else. So that was the reason why I raised it. There were several people that had approached me about this issue, and I said I would bring it forward for discussion among my fellow council members.
Anybody else have comment on this?
No, I mean, like we've bounced this back and forth before, and I think our concern was hearing all sides of the issues, to make sure that we had an informed decision, it wasn't just based on various talking points, various issues from one side or the other, because, there's been various lobbying, in the news, you can listen to news reports, you can listen to the lobbyists, you can listen to talking points from all sides of it, and frankly, I have my own opinion on it, and I have heard, persuasive arguments on both sides of the issue. On one side, where we talk about water quality, we talk about the value of pollution and stuff like that. But then on the other side, I hear where we talk about looking for different alternative energy sources. And, I heard people make persuasive arguments saying that's going to free up more natural gas, which we all complain about, that we don't have alternative energy sources. So I just want to make sure that we heard everything, we were completely informed, and anything that we introduce or anything that we pass doesn't shackle us. First of all, doesn't shackle us, and then second of all, it has some type of teeth to it, where we're not just saying, this is what we passed, that's nice, but does it come from the federal level? Where we can say what we want to say right now, but does that come from the federal level? Just like we may not agree, I think one of the issues came before, we may not agree with the money that's coming out of politics right now, but right now, what can we do to affect something that is at the Supreme Court level? It's at the Supreme Court level right now. We all have our opinions here. I just want to make sure it has some type of teeth to it, or something that's enforceable, and we're not just spinning the wheels again.
Mr. Anderson?
Definitely, there's both sides or whatever, but I think, definitely, we want to do what's best for the city of New Brunswick.
And I believe that, Mr. Hamilton, correct me if I'm wrong, that Governor Christie did a moratorium, right?
There was a moratorium that expired in January.
Mhm.
There's a reauthorization of that moratorium that's pending in the legislature now and has not been acted on yet. And that is,
And it would be to stop
it
until,
would have a time limit on it, and it would be pending receipt of the kind of studies.
the study that the
are not
DEP
exposed.
federal government does.
So can we follow through with that moratorium and adopt some type of resolution where we're going to follow that moratorium until something comes out?
I think we could support the reenactment of a moratorium for a reasonable period. And I'm reminding to you, I suggested maybe 3 years. They ought to get out of their way during that period of time. Or if the reports get filed sooner, why the moratorium would end then. So, whatever has to be done. But I don't have a resolution of that kind prepared tonight. Obviously, we could prepare it for the next meeting if you direct me to do so.
But it's something that we could look at. I think that's, in the meantime, until we get all the full report from the federal government for the EPA and see what is it that, because like, I concur with you, I'm concerned about the water. So it would be good to have that information, just to make a much more informed decision based on that. So I will support something like that. Any members of the public wishes to comment on this particular topic? No, I have Mr. Walsh first. Name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Jim Walsh. I live at 76 May Street in New Brunswick. Also the State Director for Food and Water Watch. I appreciate you guys having this discussion this evening about this very important issue that deals a lot with the future of our energy. There's a couple of things just to the points that were made that I would like to just kind of address now, and also I brought some additional information for you about why we think that a permanent ban on fracking in an ordinance rather than a resolution would be the best way for the council to move forward. I think that first, Councilman Fleming brought up the idea about alternative energy sources, and I and many people don't view natural gas as an alternative energy source. It is more extractive fossil fuels that are non-renewable energy using the same dirty technologies that brought us the spill in the Gulf of Mexico for the BP oil spill, and applying those technologies in more extreme ways to extracting other fossil fuels out of the earth. And we've actually seen that because of the fracking that's going on, the depressed cost of natural gas, that it's actually undercutting the ability of renewable energy sources to be established in the market, because the return on investment for renewable energy sources relative to that has actually becomes lower as natural gas prices drop. And so we actually see the prevalence of natural gas not as an alternative energy source, but actually as stifling the development of sustainable energy sources in the state. And I think that's an important thing for you and the other members of the council to consider. I would also like to, the EPA report is a very important document and a very important study that's being done. That study is very narrow in its scope in terms of what it's looking at. There are much, and drinking water is a very important thing to be looking at in terms of fracking, and it is something important. The EPA actually released preliminary data about a year ago in December about fluids associated with fracking that were found in a well in Pavilion, Wyoming. And they released that data early as part of the study because they saw it posing a direct impact to the community, and couldn't see sitting on that information until the final study was released. So we've already seen the EPA saying that chemicals associated with fracking have been found in drinking water sources in Wyoming. There are people in Dimmock, Pennsylvania that have experienced gas migration into their drinking water wells because of that. The EPA says, well, this water doesn't exceed safe drinking water standards. Well, it's interesting because they don't have a safe drinking water standard for methane. They're not measuring methane. So, but people in Dimmock right now are having Cabot Natural Gas deliver water to their homes on a daily basis because of the methane migration that's happened into those wells. And Cabot denies responsibility for it, but every day they continue to bring water to these communities as part of a legal settlement. that went forward. There are other documented cases of water pollution and contamination. In Bradford County, Pennsylvania, there was a spill that happened, that the exact same malfunction that happened in the Gulf of Mexico with the blowout preventer happened to a fracking well in Bradford, Pennsylvania. It caused tens of thousands of gallons of fracking waste to be spewed into a community, required evacuations. I couldn't even imagine the damage and detriment that would cause New Brunswick and our surrounding communities if that were to happen here and get into one of the many streams and tributaries of the Delaware River, or the Raritan River. And, you know, as a major concern. To the aspect of doing a temporary versus a permanent ban and setting a timeline on this, you can repeal something at any point in time that you pass today. You can go back and change municipal code. Don't set an arbitrary timeline based on one study that the EPA is doing. And set a standard that says we don't want this stuff here. And if the prevalence of evidence changes, this industry changes for some reason, you decide you want to do that, then you can act at that point in time, or leave that to another council to reverse your decision if that in fact becomes the case. We believe there's a preponderance of evidence that fracking isn't safe and proposes a real threat to our drinking water. It's also important to view this in terms of fracking that's being proposed right now in the Delaware River Basin. The city of New Brunswick gets our drinking water from the Delaware-Raritan Canal. The Delaware River flows into that as one of the major sources of water for that canal. There's a plan that's sitting right now in front of the Delaware River Basin Commission that would open up that beautiful, pristine wilderness to about 20,000 fracking wells. This could cause tremendous concerns for the residents of New Brunswick. It's not New Brunswick interest to have a spill happen in the upper Delaware River Basin, because that could have impacts on our drinking water as those contaminants make their way downstream. At the last council meeting, there was a question that Mr. Anderson asked and comments made tonight about both sides of the issue and addressing both sides of the issue. I brought information here for you about the jobs promises, and one of the major claims the industry makes. I only brought enough for each of the council people, and I think one extra. One of the claims the industry makes is that fracking will provide jobs for our communities. And this report documents the industry's misinformation campaigns about job creation. The industry, in doing these job creation reports, don't look at the impacts that this has on other industries and other that might be going on, like recreational opportunities and things like that. I've also brought a report for you on energy insecurity. This is extremely important. One of the things that the oil and gas industry talks about is the fact that we have right now 100 years worth of gas in the country. That this report actually documents important information about that 100-year estimate comes from the fact that they plan on fracking every square inch of the country, including cities like New Brunswick and Pittsburgh and Dallas. And that 100-year estimate also doesn't take into account the fact that they will be sending what could be, is right now, over 25% of the gas in the country has already been approved to export to foreign markets. We don't have the infrastructure in place to export that gas. So as we're looking for these alternative fuels that, we talked about gas as being an alternative fuel, right now those cheap prices on gas are actually being used to justify the creation of gas-fired power plants and gas vehicles. As this 100-year time frame gets shorter, because more and more gas is being used in these things and that gas is being exported overseas, the supply that is there is going to go down, which is going to put an upward cost on gas prices. One of the important points at this point report makes is that the price that gas companies are getting for gas is about a fourth of what it costs them, 25% of what it costs them to actually do the fracking. So in order for this industry to be viable, the prices have to rise. And they're not making their money right now on drilling for gas. They're actually making their money on flipping land, where they'll buy up leases in these areas. So this is important and relevant to the city of New Brunswick, which is seeing a high level of foreclosures because of the housing bubble. This is actually mimicking what happened with the housing bubble, where investors were planning, you had banks that were aggregating properties and reselling them into a seconds market. What's happening now is the gas companies are going out and getting leases, aggregating them and selling them into a seconds market that are expecting to be paid for these gas prices with future gas revenues. And so what we're seeing is that these gas revenues are actually, the projections from wells are actually far lower than what the industry had been projecting even a couple of years ago. And so with that happening, we're expecting that these investors may not be getting their money paid back in the same way they weren't getting their money paid back from these mortgages that were foreclosed upon. And there's significant documentation there. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question to Councilman Egan.
I'm ready to vote for the ban if we gave you stuff.
That's great. Let's put it up. There's a lot of good reasons, and I'll give you one final report that I want to give you.
Just to give somebody else the opportunity.
Absolutely, we will give everybody an opportunity. I feel you run these meetings exceptionally well and do a very good job of giving everyone an opportunity. I appreciate it. One of the things I want to draw your attention to here is page 3 of this report. And I know it appeared that you guys tabled the case for a ban on fracking. It appears you guys tabled the smoking ordinance tonight. Is that correct? So I think this is something where you guys didn't vote on that, but there's concerns about smoking in public parks. In here, Dish, Texas is actually documented benzene in their air in Dish, Texas from fracking operations that are happening there. And I'll tell you, if you're worried about allergens and concerns from smoking, like you do not want benzene in the air in a community like New Brunswick. And so I'm glad we have Councilman Egan's support for an ordinance on a ban on smoking. I think that's really, really great.
Stop talking.
His father, and he's following in his father's footsteps, who voted to support a ban on fracking in the entire state. So, I think that's really positive. Thank you very much. I hope that we see an ordinance on the agenda for a first reading at the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Are there questions?
Anybody else wishes, any member from the public wishes to address anything that Mr. Marsh has not addressed already? Name and address, please.
Yeah, Elizabeth Nelson from Somerset, 408 Stillman's Lane, Somerset, New Jersey. I'm just here to say that my town council did actually pass 2 resolutions to ban fracking and to ban fracking waste. The second one incorporated the frack waste. And just like New Brunswick, we do have our water supply comes from the Delaware River via the canal system. So that was one of the reasons that interested our town council. You have somebody mentioned, all of the pros and cons for fracking. I wanted to invite people to take a tour of Dimmock. You can take a tour. There's a lady's phone number I have here. She's about 60 years old. She does tours every day of Dimmock. I believe that people from many countries come to see Dimmock, which has become the poster child for what not to do, what not to happen to your community. The gas company in question that drilled there, Cabot, they had 130 violations before somebody's water well blew up because the pump caught ignited methane in the water well. Now everyone was contaminated in the area. Once they had tested their wells, they found that everyone's well had methane in it, but also chemicals. And they then followed a whole problem of how to get their water replaced. So this is the kind of thing. We just, in New Jersey, by using these municipal bans, we're just kind of putting the gas industry on notice that we don't want that kind of thing happening here. We don't want the frack waste either. The frack waste is coming into the state. It's come already into Carteret, Kearney, and Elizabeth. And it is radioactive. The Marcellus Shale has some of the most radioactive rock in the country. It has radium-228 and 226, and it's very high in radon. So, and there's no way to get that out of the waste. PA had been accepting it into the wastewater treatment plants in the past. Now there's Geiger counters at the dumps where they bring it, these regular landfills where they bring it. And I heard from testimony in Harrisburg just the other day from a worker who's blowing the whistle that in many occasions they switch the Geiger counters off because the radioactivity of the loads is so common and so high that they just avoid the whole issue. I'd also like to say about Pennsylvania that the DEP is commonly known as don't expect protection. So we don't want that kind of issue coming here, pollution, and the really the abandonment of the communities to industrialization of where they live and how they live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Lamb, 44 Farms Road, East Brunswick, New Jersey. I'm on the board with the Northeast Organic Farming Association, so I just want to give a few words of support for your writing resolution to ban fracking in New Brunswick in terms of farming. You've already heard that there could be accidents. There have been numerous accidents as far as spillage of fracking waste. It could affect the aquifer, which is 1,000 feet. It could be less than 1,000 feet deep under the ground. And where do we get our water from? We often get our water supply from these aquifers, and farmers often have wells. I'm speaking farmers. New Brunswick probably doesn't have any farms, but New Brunswick has community gardens, and you still can obtain water, maybe possibly through these aquifers, okay? And if they're contaminated, which is possible, it happens through fracking. If you bring fracking into the town, it can affect and hurt gardens, community gardens, any farms. And being from NOFA, we're working on bringing organic farmers and farming back into our community. So we're trying to relocalize the food system and trying to keep it organic. And if these farms are affected by fracking water from these aquifers that are contaminated, they can't be called organic anymore. You probably really don't want to eat food that was watered with this contaminated water. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You've heard about all the contaminants that can be found in fracking water: arsenic, benzene, lead, toluene, radium-22, which is radioactive. So you want to keep that away from your foods. Okay. Oh, and I have some information.
Thank you. Anybody else on this before we vote? Sir, which one? Eric.
My name is Eric Straub, and I live in Ward 6. And I just have some things I want to say about fracking. No, actually, we've heard some things about fracking. I want to just ask the council, were you serious, Councilman Egan? What I want to know is, because I was a little concerned about what you were saying, Councilman Fleming, about not wanting to take a position or wanting to wait for the state or the federal government possibly to, before we act. I think that this is a municipal meeting. This is about the city of New Brunswick, and you do have a right to speak on the citizens of New Brunswick. I also see in national politics a lot of times today going on where you have one party not letting something that's really supported by the public, kind of like the fracking ordinance here, being put to a vote. Or when it does come to get put to a vote, it's been so watered down so it doesn't actually represent what people want to pass. So my question is, will you actually put a ban to a vote and take a yes or no vote at some point in the future? Since you haven't had the time to do the research for the discussion tonight, there's been research, and there'll be an opportunity to get additional viewpoints from people who are supportive of fracking. And will you put it to a vote before the end of the next?
If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't be discussing it. That's what we're trying to do, is to get the most information that we can to make an informed decision. But that's why we will have been talking, because we don't want to vote.
Not on fracking, but specifically on a ban.
Well, before we do that, we have to be informed, right? Because you want us to make an informed decision. You just want we're hearing you every time you come. Everybody comes, they bring more information. So, and I thank you for that, because that will help us make a decision. So, in order to make any type of decision, we need to be informed, especially if it's something that is going to affect New Brunswick. It's not going to affect New Brunswick. So that's what we're here. That's why you're here, to give us that information, and we will do our due diligence and take that information. And it might happen tonight. It might not happen tonight, but it might happen, in a next meeting or not.
But will the vote be on specifically a permanent ban as opposed to a moratorium?
At that point, we're not ready. That's what we have to do.
So you're saying you won't make a commitment to vote on a ban? And yes, sir.
You can't ask this party to vote on something they haven't seen.
They haven't seen. That's all I'm asking.
This is a very simple question. Will you
And I'm
commit to
telling
have
you-
a vote at some point in the future
At some
on,
point in the future, we will have something, whether we're gonna ban it or not, I don't know. But we will have, whether it's.
so you will not
and then
commit to vote on a ban?
We are, whether you say.
Not yes, but just vote on a ban.
Let me just tell you something before. We're trying to have a conversation here, and the best way to have a good conversation is that you let me finish and then I let you finish, right? Do you think that's?
I
fair?
think,
So,
which
but
I
you
don't
are
think you get what I'm
interrupting me when I'm trying to give you the answer. So what I'm telling you is, we are looking at everything, whether we're gonna vote for banning, it could be that we're gonna say, I like the idea of a moratorium. So maybe I'll be convinced that instead of a moratorium, we need a ban. I don't know yet, so that's when we're getting this information. So what I committed you to this council to do is to listen, like we're doing today, that's what we're discussing, and by the next meeting, we will have something on it. I don't know how it will look like, because I'm not the only one making the decision, there's 4 more people here. So that's what I can tell you.
So the answer to my question would have been, no, you won't commit to vote yes, to vote on the ban, one way or the other. That's what you just said.
As of now, right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else before we continue? Yes, in the back, name and address?
My name's Amy Johnstein, I live in Ward 6, and I wanted to encourage you all to vote for a ban on fracking and on fracking waste. This stuff has been shown to be radioactive, we know that it's toxic. It set off radioactivity alarms in landfills across Pennsylvania and descended into New Jersey as a mistake. Descended into our water treatment plants as a mistake. During Hurricane Sandy, treatment plants across New Jersey were overwhelmed, and like stuff that was there got into rivers and streams. Like accidents happen, emergencies happen, and allowing the stuff into the state to begin with is a mistake. And what happens up the river can wash down into New Brunswick, and so I think it's important for New Brunswick to stand up and to stand with other towns that have said they don't want this in our state, and to defend our environment. And I really encourage you to vote on it tonight. You can pass it tonight, please.
We don't have it, we don't have one yet here, that's why we can't go with, because we don't have it always in so we just have, we're just talking about the resolution. So because we need more information, but thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else before we continue? Name and address, please.
Lauren Petrie, 124 Bayard Street. And I am definitely in support of a ban on fracking, a permanent ban. I think a moratorium is really just more rope to hang yourself in the end. I think that we take our water for granted in this country. We don't have the problems that third world countries have. We turn on our tap, water comes out every time. And we definitely forget where that water comes from and what goes into keeping that water clean and safe for our communities and for our families. And what happens when we allow an industry to come into our city and jeopardize that? We talk about being shackled by energy sources, but imagine being shackled by permanently contaminated water. Where do you go? Now you've got to knock on other states and other towns for clean water, and they're at the mercy of other areas to supply your water. We're looking at an industry that uses millions of gallons of fresh water. They're using clean water from our lakes, our rivers, our Delaware River Basin, and they're injecting it deliberately with toxic chemicals that can never be removed from that. In so many ways, we're allowing them to destroy our most precious resource. And then we're allowing this industry, go ahead and inject it into the ground just to pump out some natural gas. Maybe you'll get natural gas, maybe you'll make a profit, but we're not profiting from that. We're allowing them to use our fresh, pristine water, to inject it with toxic chemicals, dump it into the ground. There's no science, there's no technology, there's no guarantee that contaminated water isn't going to seep into our groundwater, into our well water, into our lakes, into our rivers. It goes on and on. Where do you put a stop to that? Water doesn't know a boundary of where it, is not supposed to go. Once you put it into the ground, that's it. We're at risk is our agriculture, our tourism, the health of our communities. We're talking about an industry it's not regulated federally. There's no accountability on their part. What's done is done. You know, they contaminate our water and destroy our community. They wipe their hands of it. They're done. They made a profit. They're like the locusts, 17-year cicadas. They're buzzing on to the next community to do the same thing. They don't care. You know, in 2011, the town council passed, you know, a resolution in support of a statewide ban on fracking. It makes, you know, only so much sense. I mean, the next logical step is to say we don't want it in the state. You know, you shouldn't want it in New Brunswick. I mean, if somebody knocked on your door and said, you know what, not regulated by the state or by the federal government, but I'm going to come into your backyard and I'm going to be dumping chemicals back there. I got a list of about 500 toxic, cancer-causing, neurotoxic chemicals that I might be using. I don't have to tell you which ones I'm using, but I'm going to dump them somewhere in your backyard where your kids play, you know, where your family eats dinner, you know, in the summer and barbecues. You know, what family in their right mind would allow somebody to do that? You would tell them to take a hike so fast, no amount of money would be worth that risk. And so it just makes sense, please. You know, I mean, it's common sense. Do the right thing, protect our water. You know, like Jim said, you can always change your minds down the road. I don't know why you would. But protect this one natural resource that you have the ability to do that. And that's what we're asking.
Thank you. Anybody want to go? Yes?
Hi, my name is Chika Sanara Alanadi. I attend Rutgers University here in New Brunswick. I live in the Jameson Dorms on Douglas campus. And as she was saying, I'm just here to urge you guys to pass an ordinance to ban fracking. Like she was saying, the gas that, the fluids that they mix, the equipment they use to pump the fluids down the well releases a lot of fuels and gases into the environment, in addition to the other trucks that release fuels and gases into the environment. And then they mix with the benzene gas mixing with the fuels from the trucks, and it causes like ground level, like ozone on the ground level. So it's like we're having double the amount of toxins within our environment, in our air, just to get natural gas from the underground. In addition to the water is deposited, the fluids that are deposited on the ground are just poisoning the water. And they're going to be there, like she said, for a long time. And we don't know what effects it's going to have on the future, on our children. And a lot of the water that's used to mix in with the fluids for hydraulic fracking is fresh water. And that really affects natural environments and for animals. And I really urge you to pass an ordinance to ban fracking. We've been here many times to talk about this, so I urge you to go through the information. We've passed you guys a lot of information. Like she was saying, this is a very urgent matter, so please do something about it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Next, before we continue, yes, ma'am?
I'm Marion Walker, 15 Civic Center Drive, East Brunswick. I'd like to speak on behalf of the autism community. I have an 8-year-old grandson who was diagnosed at 2 with autism. He wasn't born with autism. He was developing normally and suddenly stopped speaking, began head banging, temper tantrums, and he was diagnosed with autism. It was found that he had a body burden of many heavy metals and chemicals. I'm urging you to pass a ban on this chemical process which is used in fracking, where they use over 500 chemicals to go into the water. This will be very bad for not only the whole community, but especially the autism community and the children who are coming up who have not yet been diagnosed and hopefully will not be diagnosed with autism. The rate now is 1 in 88. In 1950, it was 1 in 10,000. It's now 1 in 88. In New Jersey, the rate for boys is 1 in 50. Please, please think about the generation to come and the generations after that and pass this ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Karina Wilkinson. I have worked in New Brunswick off and on since 1998. I'm with Food and Water Watch right here on Bayard Street. What I kind of
I find it a little confusing that in 2011, you passed support for a statewide ban, and now you're thinking, on advice of council, that perhaps a 3-year moratorium statewide would make more sense. This doesn't really make sense to me. Are there people on the council tonight that think that we should bring fracking wells to New Brunswick?
I don't think that's, I cannot answer for them, but my understanding is that there were some members who wanted more information to make it a informed decision. And I was part of the council, and I think, Kevin, you were with me also. We were here when we did the 2001 resolution banning the state. We were here, we were part of that, 2011. So I do understand, but it's just that some people wanted more information in order to make an informed decision. So it's not that we are against banning it, or we are siding to one side or the other. We're trying to have as much information as we can so we can make a consensus on this.
Well, I think it's great that you want to hear all sides of the issue. I think that we know that the EPA has found contamination in drinking water in Pavilion and of the aquifer in Pavilion, Wyoming. We know that there are over 1,000 cases of water contamination around the country from fracking. We also wanted to bring this resolution through your environmental commission, and we've learned that because of a couple of tragedies last year and the failure of any new appointments to be made to the environmental commission, there's only 3 people on the environmental commission, so there's no quorum, so you can't be getting the good advice that you might be getting from an environmental commission. So I would encourage you to reach out to those people in the community that have information, that want to help you inform yourself on the need for a ban, an ordinance banning fracking, and not, I can't understand why you would go backwards and say you support a 3-year moratorium in the state when you already said you supported a statewide ban. I don't understand you're going backwards instead of forwards.
And I thank you for the information that you have brought to us, because we have been reading it. So don't think that we haven't, we have been very diligent in trying to get as much information as we can. Anybody else before we continue?
Resolution that I passed previously.
We have it. You have that, you have it.
Maybe we can make that into city.
So you want to propose something?
I'm going to take a look at the thing that you passed previously about the state, to see whether or not we can make that, a ban for the city.
Can we have it ready?
I'll get a copy from Dan in the morning.
And then for the next meeting, we could just have it ready for vote. Okay? Thank you. At this time, anybody else from the public who wishes to address the council on any other topic? Yes, Mr. Crowderville, before you go, I'm sorry, sir, I just saw you. I asked Mr. Crowderville, just you have to wait until you are, Mr. Crowderville, I told you.
All right, I'll try to be quick. I have a few questions I wanted to ask about the project Move Out. And it's obviously been a success, it's being done again. Is there any changes being made this year versus last year, or anything that's being improved about it?
Do you have any information? I know I got a flyer that they doing all that.
Yeah, I can address that. The only change from last year is that there was a drop-off point at Cook Campus that didn't see any action last year, so that's been eliminated. Everything else is the same for this year.
Terrific. I wanted to ask, I know you're all Democrats, I am too. There's going to be a new county chairman for the party. Your new chair is Kevin McCabe. Does anybody know him? How do you feel about him? Is he going to be a good leader for the party?
I don't know him, so I will have to get to you, so I have to come on that.
I know he's involved in the labor movement.
Well, I don't know how this is a forum to ask this about Kevin McCabe. This is a public meeting. This is that political. We're not political.
You don't have to answer. I just figured I'd ask. I read 2 articles in the Star Ledger this Sunday I wanted to ask about. I saw the state is looking to dredge the DNR canal. And I want to know what impacts that'll have on drinking water and whether that's something the city supports or it's, I think it's for the purposes of drinking water is why they're doing the dredging.
They're dredging because there's a buildup of material in the canal in the Franklin area, which prevents them from getting as much water eastward as they would like. So I think it is advantageous to us that the water coming in our direction is not constricted in Franklin, and I would support the dredging. I think it's a positive thing to anyone who takes water out of the canal for drinking water.
Well,
And by the way, we've been advised there'll be no interruption of service.
Thank you. I noticed that in the same Star Ledger, they had an article about Somerset County sort of making a push to get to increase business in that community when the Super Bowl comes to New Jersey this January. I want to know, is New Brunswick making any efforts to get people to stay in hotels or do anything here that they wouldn't normally do?
Yes, we've been in discussion with the city market and other businesses throughout the city and the hotels especially because even though it's being played up in the Meadowlands, people will be staying here also. We've also had discussions with Princeton in that regard to working together.
Thank you. I want to know, does anybody know that the Board of Education is meeting right now? Is that a good or a bad thing that the board rescheduled their meeting to conflict with the city council?
It's a conflict for you, Mr. President, because I know you want to be involved.
And many people want to be involved.
You know, I don't know what happened, so I cannot answer that question.
Okay. I thought it was great that Ms. Wilkinson touched on the Environmental Commission not being as functional as it could be. I know I brought this up last week, and you said you would have an answer for me on all these defunct boards that don't have appointments and aren't having meetings. What is that update?
We did, I spoke to Mr. McKenna. You have a
All the boards are up to speed on membership. We have one vacancy on the Environmental Commission right now. That was due to a death, but everybody else is in place.
Okay, so the Minority Business Enterprise Commission, the Human Relations Commission, which haven't had meetings in years, they have members?
That's the only one that doesn't have any members at this point.
Which one? Those are
Which
two.
one?
No, I'm sorry.
Minority Business Enterprise Commission.
They have one? He just said it. He just gave you a report that
Hold on.
it said environmental
Hold
commission.
on, I've got it right here. I'm sorry, which one was that?
Minority.
Business Enterprise Commission.
Enterprises.
It hasn't met since I've been in town.
Mr. President,
Yep, that's a defunct board at this time, there are no members.
Right, and the Human Relations Commission?
That's fully staffed.
Fully staffed. When do they meet?
we haven't met, because I'm a member.
Okay.
So we haven't met, but we're looking to, as a matter of fact, I was having a conversation to see if looking at ways, how can we be more effective and do some other stuff.
Okay, I think my overarching point was that these boards aren't having meetings, so they're not doing any business, and they're supposed to answer to the council. So the Human Relations Commission, the Cable TV Advisory Commission, the Citizens Taxi Service Council have not had meetings in months, if not years. The reason I brought this up was because of the whole Delafield situation and the Student City Advisory Committee. Project Move Out is a product of the Student City Advisory Committee, but since then, they haven't done anything.
It's a product of also the workers in the city, because we talked about it here, so
Yeah.
to be fair, so it's not there. So it's getting credit what credit's due. It's a collaboration. But I do hear you, and I know that there's some that have been meeting, some others that have been meeting, and people don't show up to give, for the meeting, so it's an issue. But they are fully staffed, so we will make sure that we work, at least for the human relations, I will speak to, we'll make sure that we start doing, because I do have some other things that we want to discuss and see how we move forward, that we should be doing, in my view. So we will work, and hopefully I can give you some answers, better answers that you want to hear in later dates.
Thank you, I hope so.
Thank you.
I'm hopeful. So
You
two.
say quick, because we have another.
I know two more. The smoking ban. Why'd you table the smoking ban?
We just, at this point, we just decided to table it. There was some concern about is enforceable, that some of the things that we cannot be enforced. So that's why we're doing the resolution for now, just to cover this. We still believe that this is something that needs to happen.
So the resolution was passed, the ordinance is held.
Yes.
And do you plan to revisit it and have the ordinance?
We don't know, I cannot give you a definite date that we're doing, but we're looking at the best way to do it.
Okay. And then the last question comes from something that Mr. Negron said, he mentioned at the last meeting, you know, he wanted the mayor to come to these meetings. Mr. Anderson responded and said that he actually doesn't want the mayor here at these meetings. He has every right to say that, and he said that the mayor could have his own meetings. And I thought that was a really good point. When is the mayor's next public availability? When can people go see the
You
mayor?
have to call the mayor's office, so you have Mr. Machera here. And Mr. Negro is very happy because he's not with the mayor, by the way, so he's very happy. So, mayor was available. Mayor was available.
Well, does the mayor have public availability? Is there a place where residents can go to meet him?
You will have to talk that, you know.
It's all controlled through Mr. Marqueta. There's no public events, no speeches, nothing in New Brunswick to see the mayor.
Well, you can see the mayor's in his office, Mr. Cameron. You know that he's in his office, he's there, you can call, make an appointment with him and he's open. To the meetings.
Yeah, I've had meetings.
So there you go.
I'm just asking if there's a place that, like most politicians have public events. They go to places and they
He does.
give,
I've
he
seen,
used to give the state of the city every year. What's the state of the city this year? He hasn't given the speech.
This is not something that we're going to discuss, like I said.
Okay, I'm just saying, he spoke in Princeton, he didn't speak here.
Can I finish my answer? We know already that the mayor's going to, there's no reason why the mayor should be here.
That's not
at
true.
the meeting.
I'm sorry.
So, the question about the meetings that he does, the mayor just goes to other activities in the morning, because I see him, and I know you see him because you're in all of them. So, you're there. So let's not say that he's not out there. So if you wish to have, he's always happy to open it. We know that we have been able to set up meetings with him, call his office. So the mayor's calendar is not my issue, because I don't keep his calendar. He has enough job for me to be asking him, what is your calendar, and me follow you, what are you doing?
I understand.
He's respecting my wish to stay away.
That's fine, because we're coming to meetings, it'd be nice.
Thank you.
I don't want to.
Okay,
Okay,
that's what,
listen,
that's what
he
I
used to do a
was
speech every year, state of the city.
Thank you.
What's the state of the city?
Sir, in the back?
I'm a resident of New Brunswick, and I have several things about New Brunswick. I want to know what the ordinance is for riding bicycles on the sidewalk. I live on Livingston Avenue, and people can't even walk on that sidewalk because of the bicycles, and they're not going slow, they're going very fast. What I want to know is what they're going to do about this.
Can we have your name and address, please?
Yes, I'm Andy Sabo from 75 Loretto Street, New Brunswick, but the side of my house faces Livingston Avenue.
We do have an ordinance in the city, bicycles in the sidewalk, it's prohibited, and I believe that, nobody should be riding the bicycles in the sidewalk. Yes,
All
Mr.
day
President?
long, all day long.
Prohibited up to a certain age.
14, up to 14, I believe.
Oh, no, we're talking about grown men.
Adults, yeah, they're not supposed to be.
Well, who enforces that?
Police department. The police department who enforces it.
Nothing's happening.
So if you see that's something that we could keep in mind, that if you see a bicycle in the area on Livingston Avenue going on, we will make sure that we pass that information to the police department so they will observe.
I should do that?
No, we are gonna do it. You already did it, I'm gonna follow up.
Okay, because this has to be done. Last year, it was late in the summer. Guy comes racing down there, knocked the lady's kid right out of the basket, knocked the basket over. She's yelling, and he's laughing. He thought that was very funny. I didn't think it was so funny myself. Those bicycles have no place on the sidewalk. And they're not going slow, they're going fast. One came past my house. I even cut my hedges down so you could see the cars or the bikes, because I almost got taken out a couple times. I got to cut the grass there and everything. And it's a hazard. And then what happens if somebody gets hit and sues the city? My taxes go up. As a taxpayer, I don't want that to happen. I would rather have them walk the sidewalk. Now, they have bike lanes. I noticed they painted them on Remsen Avenue. Let them go to Remsen Avenue and ride the bike.
So eventually, I think that's going to be a 5 minutes, would be going.
And Livingston Avenue?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine with me. They could do that. I don't park on the avenue anyway. It's dangerous. You get hit. But anyway, that's one of them. 2 years ago, I came to one of the town council meetings, and I asked about loud car radios and loud exhaust that are so loud, it's out of control. They'll not boom your windows, everything. And they sit there waiting to get on through the stop street. Boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It's nasty. It's not nice. It's disrespectful. But they have no respect. So what do we do about that?
I know there's also quality of life violations.
It is a
That's
quality,
one of
yes.
them. No,
Yes,
that's one of
ma'am.
them. Loud music and it's one that is also enforceable. because the city has ordinance on that, so all of that, have you ever, called the police when you have heard?
I've called the police so many times. I know the number by heart. I know the sergeant's number by heart, and I even know Captain Sabo's number already. So I've spoke to them all. Now, at one time, the captain did do something, and it really got pretty quiet for about 3 weeks, and then it started all over again. That's unacceptable. It has to stay quiet. It has to be done. Mother's Day, there were so many fast cars racing up and down that avenue. It was silly. No police presence in the 4th Ward. We get nothing up there because it's a pretty good area. But it is not as good as they think it is because there's a lot of stuff going, racing cars. Well, I don't care too much about the cars, what they do. They kill somebody, well, they're out in the street and then they're in trouble. As long as they don't make my taxes go up. Kids on properties come out of the school. I live on the side of the middle school. I want to show you something. Yesterday I came out to my house. I've been growing a tree. I planted from seed for 5 years. This is what I found, busted all over the front yard. I did make a police report on it. This took my heart out because I took so long to grow this tree and it was beautiful. Now it's garbage. What about the kids on the properties? And I've called the school already and notified them about these kids coming all over everybody's property. Oh, we're going to do so, we're going to do. They don't do them. You're going to have to load them up on a bus and get them out of that school and take them home. If they can't respect taxpayers, and I'm paying for them to go to school, they will do what they need to do. Now, do I have to put a fence up and put razor ribbon around the top to keep them out of my property or what? What can we do? They're all over everybody's property, these kids. And they're through the backyards. They don't care. I can't grow a garden in New Brunswick no more. Not anymore because they'll steal all my vegetables. I mean, I'm right there in the open. I don't have a fence. What good's it gonna be? It got stolen 2 years in a row now. I'm not gonna waste my money, throw my money out at another garden. Can't have a garden. I can't walk in the sidewalk. I got this vandalism in my yard. What are we gonna do? Why isn't anybody looking out for what's going on? Now, for a while, last year, they put police out there on that avenue watching all those kids walk down that sidewalk. And they'd say, get on the sidewalk, stay on the sidewalk. And then the kid would flip them off or give them, nasty attitude. That's wrong too. One policeman actually got out of the car and grabbed a kid up for doing that. So, I had to commend him for that because he did try to get a little respect out of the kid. But what are they teaching them in this school? That's 5/8 of my pie or more for the taxes. What are they doing? Why don't they load them on a bus just like the rest of them? They told me if they live within them, I think a mile of the school, they can walk. But if they're going to be doing this, I don't want them walking past my house. I don't want them destroying my property. It's not right. It makes the quality of life further go down. And then my house prices go down, my property value goes down, but my taxes still go up. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up to you. In New Brunswick, there are boxes, these yellow boxes, all over the place. And this is what I want to show you what they're putting in it. This is on the way to school. This, to me, is inappropriate. This is inappropriate. This here is definitely inappropriate. Why should a kid go there, take it out of the box and wipe his private parts with it? And I've seen it done. And then they throw the paper around. These boxes gotta go. They're tying them up to our street signs. They're putting them on the stop signs. They're chaining them up. They're doing all this. All of this paper, this is inappropriate. Should not be tolerated. This doesn't need to be there. It's not a learning device. It doesn't do anything. All of these papers are all with, it's smut. As far as I'm concerned, this is downright smut. Well, what do you think of this? Council, what do you think of this? Is this good to have out, to let our kids see this? Who let these boxes come out here? Who said it's okay to put them all over the place?
I'm not sure how I know that.
We're gonna get it around. They gotta go. They gotta go. All of these boxes, and then they're hanging signs off them with little snip outs for rent this, rent that, and they're tearing them up, and they're all over the place, and it makes our town look like crap. It really does. You go down Saddam Street. When you come over French Street, make a right to or left, Go down toward the railroad tracks and just look on that one building. What gives them the right to post signs outside of windows? I know in Sussex County you can't do it. They don't allow it. You have to put that inside the window because there's an ordinance against it. All of these ordinances are being broken, and they're putting all this crap around the town, and it's further taking the quality of life down further, and making a mess out of our pockets when they take these papers and throw them all over. I think this is totally wrong. What do you think?
I know that they have been there, I know that the kids have taken them, because to blow them out, because I have seen them doing it.
Yeah, then I gotta pick it up. I won't pick it up. Would they throw them all over my property? I gotta go in my bush, just take all the papers out. They're all over the place. When they get wet, they get messy. I mean, this is wrong to even do this. And they fill these boxes up with these. I've seen it. This is totally wrong, and I don't like it. I mean, I don't think it's appropriate to put stuff like this out there in the public, and a kid walks by, and he's in there and taking it out, and look at this, and doing his crazy thing. You know, it's not right. This has to be cleaned up, and the fourth ward needs a good cleaning. So we're gonna need to get patrol up there, we're gonna need to get these bicycles off the sidewalk, and I don't even know what else. I think I'll save for the next town council meeting, because we got a whole lot of stuff to go over with you. It's just out of control, and it has to be taken care of, especially loud radios. 312 this morning, boom, 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 woke me right out of a sound sleep. And I don't get to sleep easy. It's not right, it shouldn't be done. And it has to be taken care of. Ride around with the windows open. Don't sit up in a cemetery in North Brunswick somewhere hanging out. You need to get down here where it's happening. You need to get on the avenue, down a side street. One time I did complain about it. I talked to the mayor. He sent a car out there and he put the car right on my street. Within 1.5 hours, they pulled over 5 cars and gave them tickets. 5 cars, the guy couldn't stop. He was going constantly, and more were coming. Then finally, it kind of quieted for a while. I guess the word got out. That went good for 2 weeks. Then it started up again. So, what are we gonna do? What can we do?
We'll follow up with this with some of these things. Thank you, sir.
Well, you're welcome. I hope we can do something better in this town, because this is going further and further downhill. And I mean, I have my mother over for Mother's Day. She heard the loud radios and loud cars with no mufflers. No mufflers, straight exhaust. And you could hear it for blocks and blocks. What is that? She says, how can you live here? I said, Mom, really, I don't know even myself. It's starting to get to me, because I'm right in the middle of it. I'm on Livingston Avenue, and it's noisy. It's disrespect all the way. Don't care about the taxpayers, even though, you know, the schools get their money and everybody gets their money. Me, I'm just a bundle of nerves here. I wake up in the middle of the night and loud radios and everything. I'm just fed up with it. I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is, or it's just me. Do you think it's, do you think it's right to do this, or?
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Lady in the back, name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Donna Drummond, and I work for Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. And what I want to say is that I'm against a resolution for outdoor smoke-free air. And the reason is, I understand that we tabled the ordinance. And what I feel is that a resolution would be unenforceable. It would just be too watered down. The reason that we would like an ordinance would be partially because of the secondhand smoke. That's one of the reasons, but I don't think that's the most compelling reason. I really think that modeling for children is a way more important reason. If children don't see adults smoking at outdoor recreational events and in parks, they're much less likely to initiate smoking. So I feel that it would be much more important to pass an ordinance. The other thing is, if the only way to get signs, the free signs, and you can have hundreds of them or as few as you want. You can have as many as you want. They can be customized with an ordinance, but the only way that they're free is if an ordinance is passed, unfortunately. And my other thought is that if it prevents even one fire in a park, or there's less cigarette butts to clean up, then that would be just two important reasons actually to pass an ordinance. So that's my feeling, and
Thank you.
for your consideration. Thanks. I work in New Brunswick, but I do not live in New Brunswick. In Howell.
Do they have it in Howell Parks?
No, they don't. But actually, it is a trend.
You hear that?
And in New Jersey, they've passed 25 ordinances just since the beginning of the year. So it is really a trend. So thank you very much.
Mr. Leo?
James Neal, New Brunswick, New Jersey, 113 Joyce Avenue. Just three things, and I don't want to take too long. First, I'd like to congratulate the people that came and spoke about the fracking with the water. Very, very informative. And I already questioned the water that we have now. Now, with them putting more chemicals in the water and thinking of the future, so they should be commended for giving us such important information. I'm also concerned about the taxes that's going up. I want to make sure that the tax dollars are going up, but I'm getting less services. So that concerned me also. Also with the police department, who's being disciplined, who's not, and all that. But one reason that I'm here, did you get any, did you follow up on the conversation we had last time?
Yes, sir, I did. And I was told, and they told me, I was told that they sent you the letter.
Right.
Indicating you, the rest of the process that needed to be, which include, the application and the, fee. So I forgot that we have to pay a fee. So to follow the process and continue with it. Did you receive the letter?
Yeah, I knew you would say that. And therefore, I'm in the process of completing the letter of the owner. But I did one better. I brought the artist who's going to paint that video, which I'm very, very proud of, the New Brunswick graduate. And I think he's the best. And Sam?
Is he here? He's here?
Yes. Sam, will you stand up, please? So later on, when I have time, when we finish, you'll realize the benefit of the vision that I have and what Sam has and what these young people have. It seems like to me politics and stuff, power is turned upside down. There's more people than politicians. We got the politicians run the show. It seemed to turn it up, our interests never really get there because of money and all that, whether you're Republican or Democrat. But it's good that the people come because they are the real power, and the politicians should listen, Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anybody else before? Anybody else that?
Yes, my name is Danielle. Me?
Yes, just come forward, just name and address, we never really say it.
Danielle Moore, 211 Joyce Comer Avenue. I wasn't even coming to speak today, but I've been hearing everyone talking about water and what goes down to the river. Now, these little streams, are they going down to the river? They go down to the river, correct? Well, okay. Did anyone really take a look at what went on Joyce? You know what I'm talking about, on Joyce Comer last week with all that rain. I meant, wow, this is getting to be so much worse where this water is coming up to Food Town parking lot. Well, what is the city going to do? And then also that's where Joyce Comer Power Street is flooding now. It's not from the drains being clogged, whatever's going on underneath. And that's also with Joyce Comer and Townsend Street, where this is really getting to be extremely bad. What does the city plan on doing?
Well, I know because I walk, in the summer, usually I go from Sudan all the way back to the middle school, to the park, and I see those drainage always full of garbage, they're always, so we need to do, as residents, we need to do a better job of cleaning that, because that's what looked the whole thing, because I see them myself. And I know, and I saw it because I have, as a matter of fact, somebody was at the school like that, couldn't go. So, if that's full of garbage, so that garbage is going to pile up in that drainage, and what is going to be You should have seen that, you should have seen the garbage, I saw it.
I'm not talking about, it can be clear of garbage, I'm talking about underneath, how
that garbage is going in. All that garbage is going in and it's going
Whatever they did to that, to Joyce Comer there with the last procedure they had, and believe me, I know you've been getting it complaints from other residents, where that's made it worse, and when I say worse, that used to be Joyce Comer and Charles Street. Now, yes, and how, if you would have went, this week, excuse me, I'm not a good talker at sometimes, but yes, where that water backed up all the way to the parking lot of Food Town. Then it also comes through Railroad Avenue, where just because you don't see water on top, how that's really backing up into a lot of people's drains. And is that mixing with waste and it goes down to the river? Are you able to answer my question? Is that mixing with waste and then goes down to the river?
I am not an engineer, and I don't know the water treatment person is hoping to went to listen to that.
Yes, we are working on the problem. Some of the culverts have existing, our old water mains and sewer lines that go through the culvert. We have appropriated some money this year in our capital budget to take them out of the pipe to eliminate the backups that they do cause. We are working with North Brunswick. We have a common line with North Brunswick that runs all along the Mile Run Brook. We are working with them to clean it out, to survey it, to see where we could have problems in the pipe system. We're putting cameras into the pipe to look at that. We are looking at diverting some of the flow from the Georges Road area that all comes down through there to a different location to, again, try to minimize the volume of water that we're getting at that point in the system.
And probably the garbage that goes in there. Thank you.
So you're saying pretty soon that
there's some money in the capital improvement budget to the capital improvement.
and it will be a good job this time, not making it worse. Please do look into that, because I mean, it's affecting a lot of people. Like I said, just because you don't see water on top, but how, give it maybe 4 blocks away from where that's bad, how it backs up into people's system. It depends what type of system you have, and it's really spreading further down just because of that little stream. So please, I hope the city does do something.
Thank you. There was one time on this side, Mr. Pittman, in the United States.
So Mel Pittman, United City Street, closing here. Of course, I want to support the fracking ban also. Normally I don't get claps in this room, but I'll take what I can get. I support the fracking ban, and I also, like Brother Neil said, our water isn't the best as it is now. We're a community that buys a lot of bottled water. Hopefully one day we can go back to getting water from the faucet, so we want to look towards that also. Also, the last council meeting, remember you said you drove up Joyce Comer Avenue, and you noticed, remember the fatal accident a few weeks ago? And you said there was a sign there. And
Speed limits and
speed limit. I rode by it today too, and there is a sign there. My question is, when did the sign get there? Because it wasn't there prior to the accident.
I cannot tell you.
Somebody
Right after you said that, I was, from the middle of town, and I started counting, there were signs there, and I have always seen it, but then again, I don't know which is specific.
I know, right, because I know I wasn't going crazy, and the beautiful thing is they had a candlelight visual for the person, and looking through the pictures, and I look, oh, there's no sign there. What? And I rode past, there's a sign there, so somebody that the city has to know to put the sign up.
Yes, the last time this matter came up in front of the council, the sign was put up the very next day.
Okay.
I don't know when the accident occurred.
I'm not, don't say that. Huh?
No, I didn't even notice, because I did it, at night, and I kind of said, well, this side, I don't know what Mr. People was talking about, but I'm glad that.
I'm going crazy, they put an old pole there, it looked like it was an old sign up there, but I know I'm like not sign there. So, all right, that's good. I also want to comment on, last meeting I was here also, police director, he used to be the director, Cat Needs, brought a situation about drug raid that took place in Brunswick. And he mentioned me because it happened next door to my mother or whatever. And he said, you know, he mentioned things about the nature, about the amount of drugs that was seized, the amount of money, guns, bullets, pills, all sorts of things. And I actually came encounter with one of the young men that was arrested in the entire situation. And when he walked up to me, first thing, he had a confused look on his face. And you know, he said, you know, when I was down at the station when they apprehended us, one of the detectives came to him and said, you know who's partially responsible for this? He said, who? He said, Tormel Pittman. He said he's constantly calling down here to the police station complaining about you guys. Now, I've never called the police station a day in my life. And I don't know what the officer's intention was. You know, I mean, I kind of got an idea, you know, but Joseph Legrand comes in here a lot. You know, he complains about the murder of his son. And if you're familiar with his situation, his son was at a candlelight vigil where someone just put their arm around him, walked him up the street and shot him.
Somebody that he knew.
Yes, this guy I knew. What if I didn't have an idea of this guy's intentions? He put his arm around me, walked me up the street, and shot me because of what a police officer said. Now, like I said, okay, neither here, why the officer said that, I will get to the bottom of it. But I'm focusing on an even bigger problem. My problem is we have a law enforcement agent that's planting a seed in a person's mind that's false. If you have a law enforcement agent that's going to lie about a person making phone calls to get you incarcerated, you have a law enforcement agent that will plant drugs in your pocket. You have a law enforcement agent that will lie when he's doctoring a police report. And I want to know, like, how did I even come in the equation? Why was my name even thought about? That's the problem that I have. We have a bigger problem because, you know, as a community try to fight violence, we think it's the Bloods, we think it's the Crips, we think it's one guy because he lives in this area, and that guy because he lives in that area. But the last person that we think will be instigating these situations is the police department. That would be the last person that would assume are putting things in it. Hey man, you know, the guy from the Ville said that he's going to do this to you. And that guy leaves the police department and shoots somebody up, and we'll never know the police was behind it. That's an insane thought. I could have got shot, no one would never knew the police. If the guy said, you know what, because he knew me, he had a little level of respect for me, and he didn't believe it, he brought it to me. What if he didn't have respect for me? What if he did believe it? What position was this officer putting me in? You know, what position, and this is me, I can't think that this is the first time this officer or any other officer did something to this nature. So I think we have a major problem. So now when I see gun violence going on within the community, I don't know who's behind it now. I can't say it's a gang. I can't say that it's because it's black on black crime or it's because of this or it's because of that. Now I have to think it's because of a police officer. I had no evidence of that prior to this situation, but I know for a fact that he lied on me. What did he gain from mine? Was he going to get a promotion? You know, he's surrounded by other officers. Did any of them say, hey, you're lying? That's insane to me, to have an officer do this. Now, you're looking at an entirely different community. My eyes are looking in a totally different direction now. Because I have no idea. I don't think you could ever stop violence in the Brunswick now that you have police officers doing this. It'll never happen. I'm trying to work with gang members. I'm trying to bring them together to have a sit-down. And even if I have a sit-down and the violence still continues, you say it's because they don't want to change. You would last thing you think was a police officer said. And this is the department that we're dealing with. Now, I want to know, say for instance, if I bring the guy, you know, which would be in double trouble, but the guy's willing to say which officer said it. You know why I didn't mention him or bring him forward yet? Because they'll punish him. He'll become an even bigger target once he comes forward and said which officer said it. So what will a person do in a situation like that? How can we counter those type of actions as a community? How can we stop? How can we even have confidence within the police department? Because I was nowhere around a situation when it happened. I had nothing to do with the situation, but yet still, they quote unquote is one of the biggest busts in New Brunswick. When you get the guys to the station, you're talking about Tormel Pittman.
Mr.
equipment out and said who the officer is, and if he's referring, if it's me, then don't take this advice, but if it's not me, you're more than welcome to come down to the Internal Affairs Office, we'll take your complaint, and if there is any truth to what he's saying, we'll investigate it and the officer would be disciplined. But we'd have to verify the truth, we haven't even heard a name yet, so.
Yeah, that's the only way.
When have the Internal Affairs ever gave any justice to any community resident thus far? Name one incident where a person came with a complaint, brought it to the attorney, because he says this every meeting. He says this every meeting. If you want a complaint, go down to Internal Affairs. I mentioned about the officer that that shot the young man in the back and paralyzed him, how he was driving around and jumping out the car, telling people, did you see the tape, and did you do this? He had a swag with him. And the first thing he said was, go down to the Internal Affairs department if you have a complaint.
You haven't come down.
Did you do it?
For what? What did, listen, even if I was to do it, right, and bring this person forward, what type of protection would he get? When the officer said it, when the officer did it, what type of protection would he get?
Who will get, the person?
The person.
If he has some protection, because if something happens to him, he was the one who went over there and said it. So if we don't say anything, and I know what you're trying to say, I wasn't there, so I'm not saying that the allegation, I wasn't there. But if it's something that it was, that's a serious allegation, somebody should investigate it. So if I was somebody, even I would personally take the risk, because I want something done. But
let me ask you one question.
I'm sorry, in order to make a change, there is some level of risk in everything that we do. So if we want to change something, there's somebody that has to do it. And you were talking about the investigation. The Internal Affairs has been doing the investigation very thoroughly. They're very good. I know the officer who's there in charge of Internal Affairs now is somebody that I really trust, and I know that it's a person of integrity. So I have confidence on the Internal Affairs Department, the police department.
I have a question. Do you believe that an officer would do something like that? Your personal belief?
I cannot say because I'm not there. I would be speculating as everybody else. Any human being is capable of doing anything, but I cannot say specifically.
No, I'm talking about a police officer.
Anybody is able, I don't know, because I wasn't there, so I don't, I cannot say that I really happy.
I mean, because Councilman is tapping his pen on his paper, but he's not the one that was in a dangerous situation. He's not the one that had somebody looking in his face with a look like, what if he wanted to play? What if he wanted to get bit? What if he wanted to shoot me? What if he wanted? So you can downplay it all you want, Councilman, and we can stay as late as we want. But you're riding out to the hills. You're riding out to the hills. You're not gonna be confronted by these people. The people that you're supposed to represent, you don't even be around once you get up from that table and leave here. I do. When I leave here, I go up around. I'll go on Remsen Avenue. I'll go to the candlelight vigil after a person is shot.
Almost every day.
When? You never. Okay, when we leave here, let's mean you go to Remsen and see me.
Excuse me, let's try to have a productive
So what? You talking?
I never seen you on Remsen Avenue.
I never see you on New York Avenue. What's the difference?
All right.
What's the difference? You're talking about, you're making an accusation that no one has any proof about except you. So how are we going to make any judgments? Tell me how we make any judgment. I'm talking now.
My thing is this. Tell him to shut up. I'm a community resident. He's an elected official.
Do you vote for Brunswick?
Out of order.
Do you vote for
That's right. Roosevelt School.
Then don't vote for me.
Roosevelt School.
Don't vote for me.
Roosevelt School. Roosevelt School.
Don't vote for me.
Roosevelt School. Roosevelt School.
Excuse me, out of order. Out of order, Mr. Pittman, out of order.
You sure you was a coward when you see me in Nordstrom.
Mr. Pittman.
Act like you act when you was in Nordstrom.
Mr. Pittman,
Act what you tell between your legs. Act like you act when you see me in Nordstrom. Act like you act when you see me in Nordstrom. What you tell between your legs.
Mr. Pittman,
We know she's the puppet for you. Why don't you take the suit and be a man and say what you want?
Captain Miller, I don't want to use you, but Mr. Pittman, you need to have this kind of happening. And I don't want to have, just listen to me. There is a process, and I thank you because you have been following the process, we're having a conversation. We cannot have this going on.
You're not going to be disrespected by nobody.
Again, you are you are,
Hey, you talk.
excuse me. Now, we're going to continue, we need to stop. gotta be, we are adults. Either we have to follow the process. If we can, then we're gonna have to take you out and we gotta do something. And I know, and I thank you again, I thank you because you have been pretty good and you have been very respectful to this, at least to me, to this guy, and I appreciate that. Please continue, if you wanna continue, let's do this in a productive and in a way that is correct.
I understand. You're trying to understand my hostility. My life was put in danger by
I
another
understand,
officer.
but there's nothing that we could do, I understand. And he was trying to answer you, you cannot be interrupting because we don't have there's no dialogue going on, it's just a conversation between two people trying to see who is the one who's gonna be louder and who's the one who's gonna get their point across. And going there is not gonna happen. And I think it's disrespectful. So let's try to continue having a good conversation here tonight. Sir in the yellow, thank you, Mr. Pittman.
Mark Lyons on 380 George Street. As to Mr. Pittman's concerns about internal affairs, I have to smile because, as I remember, nothing was done about the way things were handled in internal affairs until Mr. Deloach was shot, when that officer who was in charge of bringing those incidents of police infractions was finally fired, I believe he was fired, for losing those complaints about police officers. So I understand his concern about how anything would be done.
You have to remember that case, when it happened, the one that started that investigation was this New Brunswick Police Department. So they were the ones who were investigating.
And I believe that was only because of the Deloach. There was such a bright light. You had all those news trucks out here for days and days after that happened. And that's when somebody smelled it getting too deep and they let that guy go. They threw him under the bus. That's what happened.
That's your opinion. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Yes, hi. My name is Lori Montgomery. I live at 76 Lewis Street. First and foremost, ban factoring, I'm definitely for about the whole water situation. I think it's very important that we do have clean water, especially when we can drink out of our faucets for the first time, and especially when you have to think about your generation as far as children. I work in a doctor's office, so I was very interested in about the whole autism and how I didn't know a lot of that information as far as, things like damaged water can trigger something like that. So I thought that was very neat. But I'm here about your New Brunswick police. If you can pass it around. It's enough for everyone. On May 1st, I was basically a victim of assault and battery. And I went through the right procedure as to going forth to the police that same night. I actually called the officer up. He came by my house. He said, we'll go to the station because my face was badly damaged. And so we go to the station, and the officer, Ronald, I felt like I was being treated unfairly. They took pictures, yes, that was great. But what they gave him was simple assault. So if you look at those pictures, that wasn't simple assault. He beat me up to the point I was unconscious. And I woke up in a trauma unit in Robert Wood. Now, to me, that's attempted murder. That's not a simple assault. So for there, I felt like I wasn't treated fairly. Also, I was telling them information, details about him. He has aliases that he's going under. He has other charges in different other states. And I'm letting the officers know about it. The first officer that was working with me, he actually helped me. But then he left. And then two other officers, which is Officer Randolph and another officer, was there. And totally everything that I was saying was just going in one ear and out the other. And, at that point, I'm just like, why am I here? I mean, you see my face. You understand what I'm saying? So they said, if anything was to happen, I told him, listen, he's going to, I'm scared to death. The next day, he was actually calling my house. He actually called my house that day when I got out the hospital. And then he called my house the next day saying he was outside my house that he wants to kill me, my mother, making terrorist, threats, to me and my family, and so I called the cops, and the same officers that paid me no mind, just blew it right in one ear, out the other. They came to my residence, and the officer that I was on the phone with, he's like, well, you have to go downstairs and, open up the doors for the officers. Because I live in a building where you have to buzz in to open the door. So I'm terrified. I'm like, okay, I really don't want to do it, but I'll do it, only because people have seen him with me before there, because that was my boyfriend at the time. So being that they've seen him before, they could have just let him in. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I went down, I spoke to them. They act like, oh, well, did you get your restraining order? And I'm like, you never told me anything about a restraining order, because I was so pissed off because everything that I'm telling them, it was just going in one ear and out the other. So I'm like, okay, I'll get the restraining order, no problem. That's what I was going to do anyway. But he's like, oh, well, I'm thinking you have to go to the station. I don't know anything about restraining orders. I was never put in a situation like this before. So then he gave me the address, and then he was just like, okay, well, he's not outside. Where is he? And I'm like, I don't know. He called my house saying that he was outside. So basically, make a long story short, the officer that I was on the phone with prior to them coming, when they were coming, to my house, he said, well, they'll check the whole building, because I told him about that issue. And he was like, they'll check the whole building. These cops were ready to leave. And I'm like, you're not going to check the building, you're not going to walk in, because there's other places in the building where this person can hide. You understand what I'm saying? I don't understand as far as what their position is, and especially when it comes to domestic violence. I really don't understand what their role is, because an officer, Tony Ingram, I seen him actually the 4th, I'm sorry, that Saturday. He straight up told me in my face, well, you're not dead, so we can't do nothing about this. So what do you have to say to me as far as that? Like, how am I supposed to work with the cops on this? I'm giving them, I heard that he fled to Maryland. I'm giving them the address that he will be at, because he has he has children, he has the mother of his children out there. And I know that was a spot that he would go to. And I'm giving him the address, and I finally got his phone number. I actually went to the police station the day before, even talking to Tony Ingram. And I'm like, well, listen, I need phone records, because he keeps on calling my house private numbers. I need to know his number. Maybe can I get some type of, phone records? They're like, no. And then they're making me go back and forth to Somerset and Franklin, because he was resigning in Somerset. So I had to go back and forth. I had to give them the restraining order copy, the original copy. All they said was, oh, just tell them it's in the system. We'll call them up. I get to Franklin, they don't know what I'm talking about. So I don't understand as far as with the New Brunswick police, like, what is their job? What do they do?
Did they ever tell you about the domestic violence unit?
They never said anything about that, no.
There is a process, and all officers are trained in domestic violence, and there is a domestic violence unit in the police department that is run by a social worker, Tanya Gieber, and Detective Gallardo. And they're pretty good. So I don't know your situation. It really concerns me what you're saying, personally, because I'm a domestic violence advocate, and I have seen it in my family, so I know how dangerous it is. So it really concerns me that the allegations that you're saying, and I cannot comment because I don't know all the details, but I hear you. And so I would follow up and see what happened, because I wasn't, just to see what happened and what was done in your case.
Yeah, I really hope something needs to be done about this, because I feel like, why should I rely on the cops now? Maybe I should take matters into my own hands and put him out there. Do you understand?
Did you get the restraining order? Did you get it at the county?
I have the restraining order here.
Yeah, but you got it at the county. You went to the court?
Yeah, yeah.
Because usually the court, what they do is they send the restraining order, they send it to the town that you live in, and then they send also to the town where the perpetrator lives. So it's not your job to go take it here and there.
Well, that's what the
county, it's the county's responsibility to do that. They fax it. That's what they do. And then the police department that receives the restraining order is the one that serves the person with the restraining order.
Okay.
Unless it's done after the courts are closed,
Mhm.
that then you have the right to do it at the police department. They call a judge, and if they decide, the judge sees it, that it's okay to give you one, then he gives you one. Then the police department right there, the officers have to give it to the perpetrator, deliver it to the best of their knowledge to the addresses that they have for whatever information. But if it cannot be delivered, it's still good, active, until he's usually they cannot arrest the person, but if they come in contact with him or if he goes to another state, he's still in the file, he's there. And once that you have that restraining order, if you have it, and if you call the police, that person immediately, they will go look for that person.
I understand
So
that, and I had to put my mother on that restraining order as
That's
well.
absolutely.
But as you were saying, that the cops, it was their job to give it to Franklin, correct?
No.
To fax it over?
The county.
To the county?
Yes, if you
Okay.
have the county, Essex County is the one that does the prosecutor's office. When you go to the family court, they are the one responsible for faxing any restraining order that is done during 4 hours. Is the responsibility of that county to fax it to the departments that are involved. You know, whether you live in Brunswick or Brunswick, the perpetrator is wherever he is. Usually what they recommend is that the victim just to make sure that the county did fax it to the police department to make sure that they have it. But it's the responsibility of the county to fax it, not the police department. It's the responsibility of the police department when it's done, when the courts are closed.
Mhm.
If for any reason you got the restraining order after 6, 5 o'clock, then it's the responsibility of the police department to make every attempt to deliver that restraining order, the copy. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Keisha, 46 Fire. I got a question. Lori Montgomery, she's somebody's daughter. She's somebody's sister. She's my first cousin. She's a member of my organization. I went through this whole ordeal with her. I want to know why your police put this as a simple assault. For the fact that when they found her, she was gagging on her own blood. She was unconscious. She was dying. She woke up in the trauma unit as a Bonnie Doe. The police officer came to the house, seen her, and immediately asked her to come to the police station to take photos and do a report. But he put it as a simple assault. What's simple about this? The guy's still calling, making terroristic threats, talking about he gonna kill everybody in the household. She gave them addresses into Somerset where he was staying, confirmed addresses. Police wouldn't do nothing about it. They said, we know, you go notify Somerset. Shouldn't that be their job to notify? We got a person who, somebody came in here and put a report, it's serious, contact them. No, they did not. When she got to Somerset, New Brunswick didn't tell us nothing. Now, we going through our thing with Somerset because they didn't even get on it either. But on top of that, we pretty much ran them about in New Jersey because police couldn't do it. So after that, we found out where he was at in Maryland, had a confirmed address, took it to New Brunswick. Said, all you got to do is contact police in that area. He's going to be at this address at this time. The cop, Tony Ingram, badge number 7166, would not do it. She said, can you at least pull his phone records? He's calling from a private number. He's making terroristic threats. Tony Ingram, badge number 7166, would not do it. He told me in front of me, in my face and her face, unless she dead, there's nothing else we could do for her. What's simple about this? The phone call's still coming. Phone records still haven't been pulled. What's simple?
Captain.
I need to know.
Captain Miller?
Can you answer that? Like, what's simple? This is serious.
I understand.
I mean, we talking about my aunt and my cousin. You know, he's calling the house. I've even got the phone call. Answered the phone. I'm going to kill everybody up in there. No, you don't know what this does to a person. You can't sleep at night. You don't know what's going on. The building we live in, like she said, people know him. They've seen him there before. Anybody will just let you in. They'll just let you in. He could be hiding in the room where we put our garbage at. He could be in the elevator. He could be anywhere. We don't know. But nobody never even made an effort. So what I did was I contacted a Maryland police officer who said New Brunswick has to call us. New Brunswick wouldn't do it. And he said even if we go and get him, New Brunswick has to want to send for him. New Brunswick not going to do it. So what's so simple about this?
I think that they're giving you the incorrect information because it's not New Brunswick, it's the county. It's the one that, I and if you send it to Somerset, and Somerset is saying that they use doesn't either, I can talk to you a little bit after the meeting, you know,
Okay.
to give you some information, and I give you some information, some organization that is gonna be able to help you out.
All right, but what is your police job on this situation? When you got an officer tell you to your face, unless she's dead, we can't do nothing else about this. She is a New Brunswick citizen, taxpayer. What good is she dead?
Captain Miller.
It sounds, the part that she's addressing now is she has a issue with Officer Ingram's demeanor. Again, come to internal affairs and we will take care of it, investigate it. I mean, that's the answer. You guys don't want to hear that answer, but that's the way the procedure is. There are guidelines set by the Attorney General, which go to the prosecutor's office. It's come to us. It's a procedure you have to follow, and we follow as well.
Understood, but.
That's the procedure, excuse me. That's the procedure, but like I say, talk to me after the meeting so I can give you some information, try to help you out in terms of the cases that's dealing with the domestic violence issue.
Give this to our neighbors. Give this to your neighbors.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
We had to do the police job, take it to Facebook, had almost 200,000 views and 45,000 shares. That's how we ran about in New Jersey, because your police wouldn't do nothing.
Thank you. Name and address.
Eric Stroud, 6th Ward, and I mean, I'm still a little confused by the situation because I don't understand how much of that was related to what is just the standard procedures when dealing with domestic violence and how much is related to the county and New Brunswick. But I do know that like we received some information about this, and so like I distributed over the internet, and some people contacted us that said that they had information about the person in question, and I contacted the New Brunswick Police Department, and like, I'm not trying to put it on an individual here. This actually seemed like a systemic issue to me. I was like, oh, I've received this information, I want to give it to you. Like, as far as I know, this is an active police investigation. It's written, it was actually, one of the communications was actually written in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish fluently, and I was like, I want to provide you with this. How do I do that? And they didn't, he's like, well, you can read it, tell me over the phone, like verbally, but there was no email address that he could provide me where I could send this information, and just like, and then, and some of it was again about the whereabouts of this person, and it was basically like, well, I'll put it in the file, and when somebody else looks at the file, I'm not going to tell anyone to do so, this information will be found. So my question is just why isn't there an email address that I could send some information? I see like the Middlesex Crime Stoppers, I know that's the county, but like, shouldn't there be? The desk sergeant?
You know, where people will send information related to cases, or anything that is,
Well, as regards to crime, there's the Crime Stoppers, which is covered by the county, but comes to every municipality. If you send it there and it knows that it's a New Brunswick case, it automatically will come to us. They review it at the prosecutor's office, and it comes to us the next day.
so in a situation like that.
There's not an email at the police.
But he could have
department.
made that, he could have told me that. I said, give me any email address I can send it to. I'm sorry.
Last name, I'm sorry.
Stroud, S-T-R-A-U-D.
Strauss, if you could just keep it talking to me. Did you talk to a police officer, or did you talk to the dispatch?
I spoke to the desk sergeant, and then he referred me. But yeah, so if it's not then that person should know to refer me to the Middlesex County Crime Stoppers then. And so I don't have to stand up again, this is just an unrelated thing. I just, years ago, I used to talk a lot about changing the website, and I could be totally unrelated, but the website's so much better now. So I just want to throw this suggestion out there randomly. Big companies, I don't know if you guys have a software like this that tracks basically all the things that we're saying, all the little notes that you're making on your paper, and it's like a customer service software. So you can track what the question was and when it actually got addressed. And I'm curious, maybe Mr. Laughlin, maybe you know, if any of the city uses any software like that to track things that are happening, or track requests or questions from the public.
Follow up for myself, but frankly, try to.
But there's no like enterprise system that you guys are
I
on.
don't use a computerized system.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, in the back? No. Yes, Mr. Romero?
Hi.
Name and address, please.
San Romero, Ward 1. Yes, sir. Yeah, before I begin, I would like to express my support for the ban on fracking. You know, there's plenty of information out there if you just tacitly check out any kind of media on like all the dangers of having stuff in the water. aside from that, yeah, I'm hearing all these stories about the police, their response or lack thereof. And I sort of have to correlate with that, you know, because I've had my own negative experiences dealing with the police in New Brunswick as a lifelong resident over the course of a lifetime, more or less. When I was in 10th grade, I was in the DARE program over at my high school, Brunswick High School, which is not a middle school. Drug abuse and resistance education, whatever it's called. And the officer who was teaching my class was a man named Chinchilla, Officer Chinchilla. Yeah. So I you know the end of the story, of course. Yeah. He would later be okay. He would later be convicted of running drugs and whores later on in life, which is funny. The point is that I don't know, the shoddiness maybe, or the police work. A couple of months ago, I was mugged not too far from City Hall building, right in between the library and the George Street Co-op. And rather immediately after I was mugged, I ran into a police vehicle like over there, where the Bravo is at, and I told the officer that I was just assaulted and that my stuff was just stolen, like not just a couple minutes ago. And I'm sure the people that took my stuff are in the vehicle because they went off in the vehicle. And I was treated as an inconvenience. I remember that night very well. The officer, had treated me, or had given off some sort of regal air. Like I told him, like, yeah, I just got jumped. And, some people took my wallet, and that was just a couple minutes ago. Like, I was bleeding, because I got, cut right here, because I got punched like a couple of times. And the officer told me, like, you're not going to bleed on my car. Like, he just like acted like I was a total inconvenience to like his, patrol route or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I recorded what happened. Eventually, thankfully, they took pity on me and gave me a ride home. But like even they were like dubious about that. Should have been. They were actually questioning me more than they were like the situation. They were treating me like I was doing something incorrect. By telling them that the crime just happened. Can you help me? So yeah, I mean, I have to question the effectiveness and the integrity of the police, and given these other stories that I hear from my fellow residents in New Brunswick. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else before we end, please?
Hi, Jim Walsh, 76 May Street. I'll be brief. I took a lot of your time earlier today, and I appreciate that. Two things. One, the cars and the things. At the council meeting about a month ago, I reported on the issue with the cars, and that weekend following that, that was happening again. I contacted the police about it. I don't know if they issued tickets or something, but they stopped something from happening. The next day I woke up, my car was smashed up with bricks, and my side view mirror was broken off. I reported that to police. It's basically said, I told them the whole situation about, police, calling the police. I don't know if it's because the guys saw me talking on the council, website, that they knew it was me who called. But I just see, like, people getting up and talking about, these issues that are really serious, crime issues that aren't being enforced and handled, well by the police. I feel that there's a challenge going on with these very simple quality of life issues, too, that aren't being addressed, and they wind up compounding themselves into these larger crime issues, where my car gets vandalized. If the police were to start enforcing noise issues with some of these vehicles, maybe they would wind up finding other things wrong with these cars or people, and maybe get some of them off the street. I think that I'm concerned generally about my safety, and the safety of my family at this point because of that. And you said you got to take risks to make things happen. Speaking up and saying I called the police about this is certainly taking those risks, and I'm paying the price for it now with $1,300 in damage to my car. And the following Sunday after that happened, I called the police again because the music was still happening despite these tickets potentially being issued. I don't know if they happened. And the police came and wrote a ticket to somebody. They actually caught them, but when the person first saw them coming, they turned the music down, and the police came up, and then they drove off. 2 minutes later, the music went right back up. I called the police, they came back and caught the person. Usually what happens is by the time they get there, the music has stopped or the cars have been turned off and it's happening. They caught the person who was doing it. I called the police afterwards because after the person left, I saw the person on their front porch pointing at my house and yelling and screaming at my house. And so I have no, when I brought that up, they basically said there's nothing we can really do about this. When I brought up the issue of my car being smashed, they're like, we'll take a report, but there's nothing we can really do about this. And so, you know, I just think this is something where we need an entire attitude change at the police department about we can do something about this. We can serve the residents of New Brunswick. Maybe we need, you know, I'm usually not an advocate for more police officers, but, you know, maybe it's more training, maybe it's, you know, more overtime or something, but you know, maybe they don't have time to deal with all these things. But there needs to be a shift. I encourage you members of the council to look at what can be done to, you know, look at the police department, look at these challenges that are happening without these internal affairs reports that people are scared to give, and see what can be done to build a more responsive police department in New Brunswick. Because that's what I feel like we need after hearing everybody talk today. Because I certainly don't feel safe now about these things. And I don't know if speaking up at this council meeting is going to put me, you know, in further risk of assaults. You know, but something needs to be done. You know, to the second issue, a gentleman earlier who was here spoke about bikes on sidewalks. I can tell you I'm an avid bike rider in the city of New Brunswick. I do not feel safe in some places riding on the street. And Livingston Avenue is one of the places where I will go on the sidewalk at times because there will be cars that are parked on the side of the road, and you have other cars driving by at 40 miles an hour when it's supposed to be 25. And I go on the sidewalk. I don't go as fast as I would if I were in the street because I know there can be pedestrians there. But you know, the city passed a law about, you know, biking on the sidewalks to protect pedestrians, which is important. But you create a dynamic where you're then pushing bike riders into the roads. I'm scared to drive down Lee because a bike rider got shot there 1.5 years ago from a random bullet from riding his bike down Lee. You know, so I think that, you know, these are, you know, I just, you know, hope that you said you're going to be addressing the bike lanes in Livingston Avenue. It's an important place to address it. It's not safe for bikes to be on there right now, and it forces bikes into the sidewalk. I hope I don't get a ticket for doing it when I do it, but it's certainly safer for me than driving, you know, riding my bike down Livingston Avenue where these cars are going 45 miles an hour in a place where it's supposed to be 25, and you've got all these parked cars, and there's no room for bikes on that roadway. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we finish, I just want to make everybody aware that the meeting next month starts at 5:30. We change into the summer schedule, so we will start at 5:30 for the summer. Before we motion for adjournment, let me take just one of you because there's a motion on the floor. Yes, sir.
Me?
Yes.
Timothy McDougal. I live in Somerset. First, I want to say I do support the ban on fracking. I basically have a question. A few years back, I explained this before, but I don't know if you guys remember it or not, but I had an incident with two police officers. You know, I'm not going to hide their names. I'm going to say their names. Officer Gregus and Officer Quick. I believe they're detectives now. I believe they have some type of superior position. But I had a situation with them when they arrested me, they assaulted me, and they seized my money, and they planted marijuana on me. I got arrested, I had to bail out. Of course, I hired a lawyer. I ended up getting all the charges dismissed, and I got all my money back. I just recently filed an internal affairs complaint with the internal affairs, probably like say about 1.5 months ago, 2 months ago. But from what I'm hearing today, it's obvious that nothing's going to come from that investigation. So after that investigation is over and nothing comes from it, what can I do after that? Maybe Captain,
if you're not happy with the investigation and the outcome of the investigation, you take it to the Los Angeles County Prosecutor's Office. If you're not happy with their investigation, you would take it to the Attorney General.
Okay. And that's all I can do? I mean,
Mr. McDougal, I'm not going to discuss your case, but we received a letter from from the prosecutor's office today about your case to continue with your investigation.
I mean,
So that's an update.
hopefully it's a good thing. I mean, because, you know, all these
So-
processes, I've been
You
dealing
don't
with
want
the
to
same.
But you know already that if it's for whatever reason, depending on, you have the option that if you're not happy to do the prosecutors, I mean, that's just satisfying, they will, they actually.
I mean, I just think it's unfair because, you know, the officers that night, they took me, arrested me, they did what they did, bang, they believed them, they locked me up and had to get arrested for it. But when I made my accusation, when I, you know, filed my report, they're still working, they're still doing it. And I actually seen one of the officers at the shooting that happened on Livingston a little while ago. I believe an officer shot somebody. And I seen one of the officers, he kind of smirked at me, like he knew. He's basically telling me, like, you know, nothing's gonna happen. And I feel like helpless because the system that you guys got in place.
I know you have the Miss Gay,
Worthless.
so let's see, if that once you know the option, the process that is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, in the back? Hey.
Amy Bronson with Bridge Street. I just want to say that, like, how much I support, I didn't catch your name, but, like, I think that, yeah, Lori, Lori is so brave to be here tonight, and, like, it's just, I think, just a terrible, like, shame on the city that she has to fight so hard to get justice after, like, a violent attack, and I don't understand how a warrant hasn't been issued already, or how, you know, like, this can go on, but, like, it's really, like, it's hard enough. You know, I can't imagine how tough it is, and I think that it's like, you shouldn't have to be here fighting for justice, like, and when people come for help, they really, you know, our city police should do the best that they can to provide it to them in, like, you know, a friendly atmosphere, and I don't know if any of you guys watch The Wire and stuff, but, like, there's this idea that, like, there's the two sides to police work, and there's, like, the drug busts and, like, stuff where you get all the guns in front of the cameras, and then there's, like, what they call real police work, and that's, like, violence and dealing with violence in the community, and I feel like that is so important and oftentimes like overlooked, and I really hope that like Lori gets like the justice that she deserves, and that, you know, people come together to help her.
Thank you. Sir, you will be in.
Yeah, Mark Lanzoff, 380 Georgia. This is a much lighter subject, but I believe it has some importance. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's this unintentional downtown tour going on where you see different buildings in town. They're trying to find a place to park. I've drawn a very terrible diagram here of what it's like trying to find the Wellness and Fitness Center's parking facility when you're on Church Street. You've crossed over George, you come under the former Farron parking deck. There's a sign there that says, this facility is temporarily closed. No direction as to where to go from there. You come up to the end of Kirkpatrick Street, you would like to make a left, you make a right there, but you'd like to make a left onto French, maybe to go on the other side. You're not allowed to make a left onto French Street there. There's a sign that tells you not to do that. So you say, okay, I'm gonna go up Kirkpatrick Street and then make a right onto Patterson. But that one block between Kirkpatrick and Joyce Kilmer is only one way back towards downtown. So what do? You go down Patterson Street instead to Elm Road, and somebody tells you, oh, go up Bayer Street. So you get a tour of the TD Bank, the City Hall here, the post office. And then on the next block, well, you want to make a right onto Kirkpatrick Street, but you remember, oh, I can't go up Patterson Street because that's one way the other way, where the entrance to the parking facility is. So you go up Bear Street, you get to visit Mr. Egan's father's office, you wave at him there, you come up to Joyce Kilmer Avenue, and you say, okay, maybe I'll go this way. Oh, you come upon Patterson Street finally again, and you see, apart from the large blue sign, the only real sign that tells you there's parking is at near on Patterson Street. There's a little kind of corrugated paper sign that says juror parking here. Now the jurors are made aware of that facility being there because it's sent in their mailing, probably. They give you a little map. But the average person who's come here to have dinner, wants a safe, quick place to park, spends a half hour here getting a tour of the courthouse, the city hall. I called the parking authority. I spoke with somebody who was the property manager, something. I'm not sure of the term, but he first said that it was the city's responsibility to get signage put up, the city engineer or something like that. And he asked for my number, and then the gentleman called back, and then he had the wrong information. He said that now there's a process of having signs made which will direct people to the different parking facilities. My question, and you probably don't have the answer, Mrs. Scarlatti, your husband works for the parking facility, park authority. He may have answered this.
Excuse me, but he does not work for the parking authority.
Oh, he's an
parking
officer?
authority member.
Okay, then he maybe ask somebody why it's taken, I don't know how long that facility's been open, 7 months, 6 months? The parking facility, why it's taken now, till now, it seems we talk about much more serious things, but even with something like that, like a park, making it easier for people to park, to spend time downtown, it's just a general blasé insensitivity about it until somebody, like I said, shines the light and you have to fire an officer because it was running internal affairs, or there's an embarrassment about somebody has a heart attack because they can't find the hospital, or this and that and the other thing. You know, that's what, I mean, this is a small thing, but it's just a general malaise about that. Why would it take so long to have parking signs put up? After you've spent so much money and time, and with that dopey amusement park ride you have with that helix that you have to get into also, you know, what's going on? What's going on? Is it money first and then everything else later? Is that what's going on? Mr. Hamilton, do you know? You're looking right at me. You have nothing to say?
I don't have an answer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up, and thank you for, thank you, just signing. Motion for the second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.